right. Well, welcome back to day 2, everyone, of the Nonprofit Marketing Summit. I am just so excited for this conversation. Scott, welcome. Um, Scott, first, on behalf of all the Nonprofit Marketing Summit audience, I just want to definitely thank you for making the time to be with us all
Of course.
today. I know I speak for the room where, we've looked up to Charity Water for years when it comes to marketing and your storytelling abilities, your branding, and really just the impact you guys have all been able to make and scale within the world. So at Community Boost, we talk a lot about mission moments, and this is a mission moment for me. So thank you for being here. And with that,
Thanks for having me.
with
This
the
will be fun.
yeah, definitely. For the audience, I plan to ask questions here for a bit and kind of guide the conversation. But Scott and I definitely want to get to Q&A as much as possible. So don't hesitate to use the Q&A feature, and you can upvote the questions you want to most hear Scott answer as well. So in the spirit of keeping the summit fun and engaging, I did want to let everybody know that Community Boost we're going to buy 10 Thirst books, Scott's book that we're often discussing today, and we're going to give them out to people that are engaging without this session. So one of the first ways you can win I'll send you this Thirst book myself, is if you ask a question in the Q&A and it gets the most upvotes, the top 3 will send you a copy of Thirst. So I think it's some really great questions for Scott. Well, other than that, Scott, yeah, I'd love to get into it.
All right.
So, Scott, yeah, just in case no one's might not have heard of Charity Water, I'd love to just give you the floor and take a second to share more about, in your words, the organization's mission and impact today.
Sure. It's kind of like it sounds. We're a charity that helps people get water. I wasn't very creative 15 years ago, so that was the best I could do. We're focused on bringing clean and safe drinking water to everybody on the planet. And, we're currently about 771 million humans away from achieving that goal. So about 1 in 10 people alive today is drinking disgusting, dirty, contaminated water. And we think that number should be 0. So we've been working hard for about 15 years to, grow a movement, raise awareness, raise money, and try to get as many people access to clean water as possible.
And beautiful. Well, I have to say, your book, Thirst, A Story of Redemption, Compassion, and a Mission to Bring Clean Water to the World was
mouthful, the subtitle. I wish I could do it over again.
Well, it truly was an incredible read. And I remember the first time I heard about it, I read it like fully in a weekend. I told our whole team on Monday, you have to read this. Like, this is so inspiring. It's why we do what we do. It's also a great read when it comes to how to, brand an organization. But I'd love to just pull up a poll real quick for the audience. Have you read Scott's book, Thirst? Yes, I have, or no, not yet, but it's on your upcoming reading list. Excellent. We'll give it like another 10 seconds or so. Well, it sounds like a lot of opportunity to read it, which is great.
I will say I'll never make a penny from the book. So 100% of the book advance and all the proceeds internationally, domestically go to the mission. So
excellent. Well, I definitely recommend reading it. It's again just a really powerful read. So let's get into it. So Scott, for those that haven't read it, I just love to hear. Well, actually, I think we're gonna share some just quick praise for the book, or I can read it out. But it truly is good, and people that are have a much better knowing than me, right? So Brene Brown said, "Thirst is a story about all of us. In sharing his own remarkable journey, Scott shows us how to find the extraordinary in the ordinary, how to find hope in despair, and how simple acts of generosity can transform everything from what we believe about ourselves to how we connect with each other. In the end, thirst is about what matters most, love." Michael Bloomberg says it well. If you ever dreamed of changing careers or changing the world, read this book. And then Ariana Huffington says, Scott Harrison's Thirst is a hope-filled book about finding your purpose in life and pursuing it against all odds. From the many unbelievable stories Harrison shares from the field to the moments when Charity Water's survival was in question, this book will inspire you to believe that you are more than the obstacle life has put in your path, and the world is more generous than it often seems. So I think those are all said very well. This is truly how I felt after reading it. But Scott, I'd love to just ask, what sparked you in wanting to write this book, and what did that process look like for you?
I think I was hoping to share the story that might inspire future social entrepreneurs. At that point, I think we'd raised about $500 million. So we were kind of at a milestone. It was 10 years, maybe a little less, but we were coming up on 10 million people served. And look, I mean, we did some really dumb things along the way. And I think, a lot of people looked at us from the outside and said, they grow every year. They're raising so much money. They have 1 million Twitter followers. They're on social media everywhere. And I wanted to share some of the, maybe a little of the insides of what was really going on, some of the challenges for the organization, some of the things we maybe wish we did better. But also, look, I mean, I was a club promoter for 10 years. So I had absolutely zero nonprofit experience. I had, I had never worked at a charity before. And I was hoping to say, maybe, if a 28-year-old, club rat can go raise $700 million and, make an impact, you probably could too. And, as well as telling a lot of the stories of water from around the world. I've been to 70 countries now. I've been to Africa more than 50 times. I wanted to really share some of the things that I'd seen because so many people take water for granted. It's just not something most people think about every day. It comes out of taps. We take long showers. We, buy bottled water that we don't even need to on our way to the gym. And yet, so many humans go without this basic need. So yeah, I wanted to story tell as well. So I was happy the way it turned out.
Well, I mean, again, incredible read, and I really appreciate the openness, the vulnerability. I don't want to spoil anything, but the moments where like the organization survival was in question, it's just really powerful because you're right. I think a lot of people in this room have looked up to you guys, and just to
Yeah, we almost went bankrupt. So not to spoil it, but I mean, there was a moment where we were, weeks away from completely running out of cash and shutting down. And, nobody would have known that from the outside.
right. Yeah, and it's just powerful, right? And your vulnerability, especially in your own personal journey, which for me resonated with me too. I had a little bit of a quarter life crisis where I was playing poker professionally through my mid 20s, and I won't go into that, but it kind of had to take this leap of faith and moved out to San Diego for an unpaid internship. Kind of changed my life, but you share a lot about how in the beginning you had that life as a nightclub promoter, wanted change, kind of chose to tithe in a way, and then just volunteer to photograph, to be a photographer for mercy ships. And I was curious, how often do you find yourself still maybe channeling those life-changing memories or experiences in the beginning? And can you just share a little bit more about that the beginning journey of Charity Water?
Yeah, I mean, it does feel far removed in a way. I've got kids now. I mean, it was kind of 17 years ago since that move. But for people that don't know the story, I was like a good Christian kid. Grew up in New Jersey. My mom was an invalid. She became disabled when I was 4, so I took care of my mom. I went to church. I played piano in church and didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't sleep around. And then at 18, just unfortunately played out the cliche prodigal son story. I'm like, well, now it's my turn. I want to do drugs. I want to party. I want to have sex. I want to smoke. I want to explore the opposite of the rules. And I moved to New York City. I became a club promoter. I worked at 40 clubs over the next 10 years and chased all the things that I thought would make me happy, from the BMW to the fashion parties to the $25 cocktails that we were selling. And 10 years of hedonistic, selfish living, I hated myself and realized that, look, if I if I died, because I started having some health issues, maybe no surprise because of all the drugs I was doing, but look, if I died at 28, I would have not only left no contribution to the planet, I would actually have a negative impact on the world, because the more people got wasted at my clubs, the more money we made. So I was really just kind of a destructive person for both my own life and then for the world. And I got this opportunity to sell everything I own and like you said, just take 1 year. I applied to 10 humanitarian organizations. The first 10 people just denied me because nobody wants a club rat, on their serious humanitarian mission. And then I got this opportunity to go to the poorest country in the world at that time, post-war Liberia, which had just finished a 14-year civil war. And I was able to dust off a journalism degree that I'd never used and become a photojournalist embedded with a group of doctors. And my entire life changed. I decided to quit smoking and drinking and drugging and all that stuff and see what the opposite of my life might look like. And could I really ask the question, could I be useful, Cameron? Did I have
Mhm.
anything to offer? And the year there in West Africa turned into 2 years. And among all of the things that I saw, it was just this one thing: people drinking disgusting water that just wasn't okay on my watch. I had been in leprosy colonies. I'd seen people with tumors and cleft lips and cataracts and, myriad issues of extreme poverty in a post-war environment. But, people were drinking dirty water. And I used to sell bottled water in my clubs for $10 to people who would order, 10 or 15 bottles and not even open it. So that just struck me as like, okay, well, I'm going to come back at 30 and I don't know anything about nonprofits or starting a company, or, I probably would have called it a company at that time. I actually bought Nonprofits for Dummies and just started and said, let me see how many people I can get clean water before I die. And then maybe I can leave the planet and actually make a positive impact in the world.
Well, and I mean, it's just such a powerful story. I see everyone saying in the chat, I appreciate your honesty and transparency, and I definitely agree. The story itself can't do it justice. You gotta read it. But Scott, you always seem to have this like innate bias towards action upon returning from mercy ships and putting on the exhibit to help fundraise. And there was just this interesting blend that I think a lot of organizations maybe get caught up with, in my opinion, of like, paralysis by analysis and
Yeah.
afraid to share their stories and struggle with storytelling. But it was like, why do you think you're so good at that? And then obviously that has trickled into your team, but
Uh, well, I'm an Enneagram 8. So, I learned about this, much later on. And I think what was lost on me then and now with, I've been at this for 15 years, I have a little more perspective. I was kind of a promoter. So the thing that I was promoting for 10 years was this idea that if you got past the velvet rope, if you were in the best club, seen with the best, most famous people, drinking the best champagne, then your life had meaning. And I did that for 10 years and I did that pretty successfully. And, seeing 1,000 people lined up outside the club trying to get in, I was creating an energy or an animation just around the wrong principle. So for the last 15 years, I've really just been promoting action, generosity, compassion, clean water for humans. I would argue is perhaps, one of the few things everybody on earth can agree on, right? Like, this is a good idea, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're a person of faith, you're not, like, people need water. So I think I finally found something redemptive worth promoting. And then I just put my energy and enthusiasm into that. And I mean, in the beginning, there was a flurry of activities. I mean, Charity Water launched in a nightclub because that's the only thing I knew how to do. I just got a club donated and I gave everybody open bar and I emailed my whole club list of 10 years and said, come and donate $20 to get in and we'll build our first well. And we did. And then we did an exhibition in outdoor spaces in New York City the next month. The following month, we went to Sundance and like got a gallery donated on Main Street and sold $20 bottles of water, which was a stupid idea, but we were just trying anything that might work and just hoping that, the more enthusiasm, the more energy, the more people came around this, we would stumble on some things that really did work. So a bias for action, I guess, just comes naturally. I get bored easily.
Well, and I just think it's so important, right? Like being willing to try things, which you guys continue to do, and being okay failing, right? Like failing forward as an organization, knowing that we're doing our best to get the word out about whatever our particular mission is.
Yeah.
Um, and in the book too, and as we've been talking about, right, like many people, and myself included, have always looked up to Charity Water and so well for so much, and see often as an organization so well resourced. And I think it happens like, well, we don't have that budget, we can't do that, right? And I appreciated sharing some of those difficult times
Yeah.
within the book, and I'd love to have you share a little
Let me
bit
just
more,
say
like.
this because I saw in the question somebody asked about the marketing team or the marketing budget.
Mhm.
For the first 10 years, almost the first $500 million, we had no marketing budget. Everything was grassroots. Now, we were very lucky because we started in that early age of social media. We were the
Mhm.
first charity to use Instagram. It was us, the Boston Celtics, and NPR. I think we're three of the first groups that like joined on the first morning. We were the first charity to get 1 million Twitter followers because I'd invited myself to speak at Twitter headquarters when there were 40 employees at the company. And then they added us to the suggested user list. So a lot of that was really good timing for us. And again, trying, for all of those platforms, for the Instagram and Twitter, we signed up on Polaroid social network, right? And there was 10 that we just had an account on. We were early adopters. If it
Mhm.
was new and interesting, we wanted to be there to see if it worked. Um, so, today our marketing team is about 10, and we raised over $100 million last year. So, we're still a really nimble grassroots organization that I think would surprise people how few resources we have allocated to many of these things, and how much we try to do with so little.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this summit is 3 days, kind of getting into the weeds of some of these tools and tactics. And so let's start talking
Yeah.
marketing a bit more. But yeah, what is some of your top advice for emerging organizations, especially when it comes to trying to market with little budget?
I've had some time to think about this. We have a lot of distinctives. So the 100% model for us has been a real competitive advantage for a decade and a half. For people that don't know, we have two separately audited bank accounts. I and now a small team raise all of the overhead, the staff costs, the office costs, the flights, the toner for the Epson copy machines from 130 families. So 130 families pay all of the overhead. And then in another bank account is where all the public's money goes. And more than 1 million donors given to that bank account, where every single penny goes directly to water projects now across 29 countries. So that kind of separation of church and state was, at the time, very unique to us. I mean, maybe there were a couple other orgs doing it, but it was something that donors wanted. I remember when I started Charity Water, I came across a USA Today poll that found 42% of Americans didn't trust charities. And NYU Wagner did a more recent study a few years back. They found 70% of people they polled believed charities wasted their money. So this was kind of the, could I take one of the biggest arguments off the table? That said, many years later, I believe we could have absolutely done the same or very close to the same without that model. I think the superpower of the organization has really been the ability to tell stories. We've made over 1,000 videos. For the first 10 years, we had no more than one videographer full-time on staff shooting and editing. And, one of our videographers, was pumping out 400 videos over their career at Charity Water. So it was just this muscle of let's tell the next story. Let's tell the next story. Let's tell the next story. And then we saw those stories get retold and we saw those stories spread. So if I had to kind of pick, the storytelling muscle of the organization or the 100% model, I would ditch the 100% model and pick the storytelling muscle of the organization.
Mhm.
And I think that's been a competitive advantage. I mean, I think we've all been to conferences and where we've all met a nonprofit founder, and after 5 minutes, you still have no idea what their organization does. And
Mhm.
I think we also have a clear mission. That's helped. We help people get water. mean, you can say it in a few words. It's just clear. People need water, and we're helping bring them clean water through a variety of solutions.
Well, I so looks like I'm just looking at Q and A, and some of this Q and A seems really relevant. So I'm going to go back and forth here. But Bree asked, on that topic of storytelling, how does your team logistically get up to date videos and photos of people across the world that are uplifting, positive, and humanizing?
Yeah, we fly to the 29 countries where we work. So Charity Water has about 2,000 people out there now across 29 countries who are constructing the Charity Water projects through a network of 49 local partners. And our team was just in Uganda, and our team was just in Zimbabwe a few weeks ago. I'm going to Madagascar in a few weeks, which is a country program I've never been, I haven't visited of ours yet. So we spend a lot of time going back, and it's not that expensive. I mean, coach flights are just not that expensive. For what, 7 years, we made every single video at Charity Water with a Canon 5D. This is a $1,300 piece of camera equipment. Okay, maybe a $700 lens and Final Cut Pro. So, we just didn't spend money. I mean, we never hired an agency. We did all of this in-house, and we went and we would spend 2 weeks in the field. And, for all of you that are working either in the local community or the global community, the stories leap out at you. I mean, it's not hard. It's just trying to then package that in a 3 or a 5 minute video, or to write a story that is compelling.
Yeah, I mean, again, that bias towards action, that ability to just go, right? I mean, did you ever have to, or was it just more of a non-negotiable for some of the people that were, backing the operational budget? Like, we tell stories and we need funds to build our brand.
Again, it was like a rounding error. It was 1% of the budget or 2% of the budget.
Yeah.
It wasn't. This is just something that we did. And look, I mean, I saw a couple of the posts. I mean, don't get me started on charity overhead. And I'm a huge Dan Pilata fan, and he's got a film coming out that I think will be really good for the sector from his TED Talk and his book. Honestly, people don't ask those questions. They're not saying, what is your marketing budget or how much are you spending on marketing? They're asking, what's your impact? What are you doing out there? What's the status of the impact you're making as you solve your global problem? I mean, I can't think of the last time a donor has said, well, I realize you have 2 bank accounts, but you're 81% programs and 19%, fundraising and admin. People aren't asking those questions. And those were our numbers last year. We have overhead just like you all do. We just have chosen to separate those, but we run it about 80-20. And that's not what I find donors are really concerned about. They're wanting to know, are you accomplishing your mission with excellence, with animation? Are you making progress? Are you moving the ball forward? And, I think maybe the one thing I have learned about fundraising, I think it's having a couple things. It's having a compelling vision that you are able to clearly and simply articulate. And then it's momentum. Nobody wants to give to the stock that is falling. Nobody wants to invest in the company that just laid off 20 people. Nobody wants to save, John's job in accounting and give the gift to kind of, help you make your budget. They want to give to things that are growing, that are moving forward. So I think we've really just used momentum as, and we grew for 14 out of 15 years. And then when we didn't grow, we figured out what was wrong and we completely pivoted and changed our business model so we could grow again. So the growth begets more growth. The more people give, the more they want to give to something that's working.
That was just a powerful segment. We're going to have to cut that up. I totally agree too. I mean, you guys have just done such a good job at,
one other thing I saw in the comments, our 130 donors love giving to overhead. Donors are open to myriad value propositions. Okay. They just want to know where their money goes. They just want the transparency. And I think that's what we were able to offer. Your money is going only in the overhead bank account. Not a single dollar will ever pay for a well. right? It's going to pay for an accountant's salary. It's going to pay for the insurance on our directors and officers of the organization, right? But it's going to accomplish the wider mission. So I really believe, now most of the people that are giving to overhead have a business profile, right? They have been in business. Maybe they're entrepreneurs. They realize that your organization is only as good as the talent that you're able to not only recruit but retain. So it's actually not difficult. You just have different products and different offerings for different people, and then you're just transparent. This is the need. If I told everybody right now the Charity Water needed a $700 copy machine that broke, we would raise $700. People want to meet needs. If I told you that we need to print paper, for our, I don't know, our taxes or something, if the copy machine that was broken was meeting a need, everybody would give to a really unsexy overhead need. So I think, that's what I've learned is it's the knowing what they are paying for or where their money is going that is way more important than, separating out overhead. I don't actually think that's so important. I don't tell other people to adopt our 100% model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, yeah. The transparency, even both to the donors with Google Earth and Google Maps, and then just in having those real conversations, and clearly, you're a powerful communicator and willing to. You're an Enneagram 8, right? That's a challenger, so you're willing to get in there. So again, this is a marketing conference and for nonprofits, and so what would you say your personal philosophy is on nonprofit marketing?
For me, marketing is storytelling. You go out and you tell stories. I'm the wrong person to ask about kind of my wife actually teaches nonprofits marketing, and she's so much smarter than me. I mean, she launches courses and I watch her videos and I'm like, I don't even know the stuff that you're teaching. So I'm not really in the weeds. I mean, we've made a couple big bets. I guess I would say that most of our success has come from video, not the written word. So if it's posting a blog post or emailing out a story, or if it's a video, the video wins every single time. Some of you might be familiar. We made a really bold bet on a 19-minute film called The Spring, which we launched about 5 years ago. And this was how we were going to launch our recurring giving program. So for 10 years, we had one of the biggest mistakes I made was we didn't get into monthly giving for the first 10 years. We had a one-time only donation organization for a decade. Well, that's really dumb. And, anyway, we did it 10 years too late. We were raising about $35 million a year, and it helped triple the organization. And everybody said, you can't make a 19-minute video. No one will ever watch a 19-minute video online. And that video has raised over $100 million, and it's gotten over 100 million views across platforms because it's as long as it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And I think we found early on 8% of the people that finished the video wound up becoming monthly givers, with a lifetime value of $700 or $800. So I guess I would say as a tactic, video can move people. It can move them to act. Maybe in a way, we're big on showing and telling. And I think it's one thing for me to tell you, there's a chapter in the book about a 13-year-old girl who was walking for water in Ethiopia. And at the end of one of her 7-hour walks, which is actually true, she slips, she falls, she breaks her clay pot, she spills her water, and she hangs herself from a tree. So she ties a noose around her neck, she climbs up a tree, and she jumps. And they find a 13-year-old girl body hanging from a tree with a broken clay pot next to the path. It's one thing to tell that story. It's another to show you all a picture of the tree. And I flew to Ethiopia, and I lived in that village for a week. And I walked in her footsteps, and I met her friends and her family, and I visited her grave, and I met the priest who gave her funeral. But I stood and I took a picture of the tree that held a 13-year-old girl's body with a noose around her neck because she spilled her water. And she was ashamed to go home, having failed her family after a 7-hour journey, not bringing water home. So there's both. There's the details of the story. It's a true story. It's a story I lived over a period of a week, but it's also a story when I'm telling that, if I am telling it on stage, it's got 17 images. I'm showing you her home. I'm showing you a picture of her mom. I'm showing you the place that she ends after 3.5 hours out to the water hole. I'm showing you her grave. I'm showing you the church where her funeral was, and I'm showing the picture of the tree. And it just has a different way. Images have a different way of moving people at a visceral level to, in this case, I hope, dissatisfaction, like anger. It's not okay that 13-year-old girls hang themselves because they were born in a village without water. When 90% of the world, we have this thing. We have 17 taps coming out of our, 3-bedroom houses, and we take it for granted.
It's just so
Sorry, I
powerful.
didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, I mean it's powerful, and it's it's, yes, you guys inspire hope, but you also make it so real. And you mentioned the spring, and I want to talk about that because I mean, the data is clear. Like, recurring giving is the way to go for so many organizations. A lot of the donation platforms are making it at least easier to add on to forms and things like that. But the spring's different. Like, it has this community feel. And do you have any advice for those that are trying to get their recurring giving community off the ground and not,
Yeah.
and to make it different?
I actually don't think we do as well as some other organizations. You mentioned community. That's one of the things I think we need to get better at. So we have about 70,000 monthly givers now. It's about $24 million a year in recurring revenue. They give about $27.61 a month on average, and they come from 149 countries. Our churn is around 2%. Started out at 3%. We've been working on that. I think community is a huge opportunity. And what we have not achieved yet, but what would be the vision is that if a Spring member has 9 other subscriptions, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Spotify, Apple Music, and they fall on hard times and they have to cut, I would want them to cut Netflix or Spotify before the spring. Now, to do that, they would really have to feel a much different level of engagement with our work and our mission than I'm pretty sure all 70,000 people do right now. They would need to feel an integral part of a community of people that is making the world a better place, that is ending needless suffering in the form of clean water, where 100% of their money is actually making a difference, I think, than we do now. So I think it is a big opportunity to build community. I mean, I remember during COVID, my wife was teaching nonprofits how to start. She launched a course on subscription and how to start your first monthly giving. And I remember being so jealous because some of her students would get their first 100 donors. And I'm like, you could call all 100 people and thank them. You could personally write Jill and say, thank you for giving $15 a month. Bob, thank you so much for giving $5 a month. We see you. It matters. You're a part of our community. One of the things I was telling other nonprofits to do during COVID was just invite all of your monthly givers to a Zoom and thank them, and then let them ask questions. I think we did 14 virtual events with the spring during COVID, and one of the events we had 570 monthly givers turn up, and I just spent 10 minutes saying, "You matter. We don't take you for granted. Look around. You're a part of a diverse community of people from all over the world. And let me tell you some of the impact that we're making. Let me tell you some stories from the field of how clean water is so critical in the face of a global pandemic. Let me show you pictures of our partners in Malawi drilling wells with masks on. Let me show you the hand washing stations we're building during this pandemic at health clinics. Because you're being told to wash your hands. Well, this is also happening in rural India or Bangladesh or Cambodia.
Yeah, you hit on so many so many wise words there. I think we are in a subscription-based world. We are competing not just with where other our charitable gifts go, right, but of what we're investing in and where we get our entertainment in a way. And that's such a powerful way to think about that, the community side of it. And I just want to say, I mean, I think Scott's being a bit humble where you So I had mentioned giving away the books. You can join the spring for like a really, I think it's just any recurring gift amount, right, Scott?
Yep. I think it's 5 is the
Um,
minimum.
5 is the low, and I encourage you all to sign up because just seeing their automations and like what happens upon it, it's really great insight. So for anyone that signs up for the spring, shoot me an email at cameron@communityboost.org with your welcome email. The first 7 to do it, I'll send you the book Thirst. But also, there's a lot of like things we can learn from it, and I recommend it. And so, well, Scott, I definitely want to get into some Q&A here with the audience too as we
Sure.
wrap up here for 5 more minutes. So John asked, this is the most upvoted question. So John, you'll also get a book. Scott, if you could go back to the beginning and do one thing differently about your approach to fundraising, what would it be?
I would have launched a monthly giving program from day one, and I would have raised hundreds of millions of dollars more money. There were 1 million donors that gave to us once and never came back. I also would have built CRM systems in the early days. I'm not a process-driven thinker. I'm a creative, and we did not invest in the critical infrastructure early on. We were always doing the next kind of exciting initiative, and that it cost us a lot more as we got to scale. So those are probably the two things. I will say, there's a tension I saw in some of the questions. Somebody's ED took a tough story off of the website because you don't want to offend donors, and how do you respect people and not not commodify, I guess, stories of pain or trauma. For me, I've been to 70 countries. I've been to our projects in Africa over 50 times. When you tell true stories that are a part of your human experience, in my case, it's my photo. Like it's just how I was experiencing it. I'm not like going and looking for some shocking, story so that I can go raise money. It's I went and lived in a village and I met these people and I know these people. And here's exactly what they said in their own words. There's a power of being an eyewitness. No one can take your story away from you. If it's your videographer out in the local community or the global community, it's true to them. It's what they experienced. And I don't know. I mean, I guess that hasn't really been a big tension for us. I will say, we've tried to build a brand that is based on opportunity and hope and inspiration and not shame and guilt. But we're not afraid to tell hard, true stories because that's the reality. I mean, I wish it wasn't, but that's just the reality. Women getting dragged off by crocodiles in Niger at a river. Well, 3 women, and I knew their names when I was there, standing on the bank as the other women get water. I mean, that's just the reality. And again, I could say that, but when I have the picture of those women and the brushy structure they've made to act as a early warning system against the crocodiles, learning their lesson, if that moves and they run back from the water, this just helps kind of imprint the urgency of some of these issues. So I think, I remember being really inspired early on by Nike as a brand. And just, thinking, look, if Nike was like a traditional charity and they did use shame and guilt in their marketing, Nike would tell everyone that they're way too fat and lazy and that people should turn off the TV and put away the Doritos and go for a run, right? And people would not want to go wear a shirt from a brand that made them feel like that. And I think a lot of charities make people feel like they have too much and they're too fortunate. Nike inspires people. They tell stories of people climbing mountains with one leg. Nike believes that if you've lost an arm, you can win the shot put competition in the Olympics with your other arm. Nike tells stories that they believe greatness is inside people, and it makes them want to turn off the TV and put away the Doritos and go try and run a quarter mile. And it makes them want to wear the symbol of a brand that might believe they are destined for greatness. So underneath everything at Charity Water, we believe we're kind of calling people to use their time and their talent and their money in the service of others, right? We're specifically calling them to our mission of water. But, it's a call to more compassion. It's kind of believing the best in people and then giving them the opportunity and celebrating them and hoping that, if we can close the loop and show them where their money went, if we can show them the impact, they're just going to want to do more, not just with our cause, but with other causes.
So powerful. Well, I want to hit this last question from Dave Perry, the third most upvoted. And then Scott, I want to give you the floor for any, final thoughts or calls to action you might have for the audience. But Dave asks, how has the climate crisis affected your ability to continue your mission to bring clean water to the world? What is the long-term impact climate change is having on your mission?
Yeah. The answer is we're not sure the long-term impact, but we are absolutely seeing the effects as we work across 29 nations now around the world. And there's a lot of focus on kind of climate resilience. I mean, climate is all about water, right? It is all about the movement of water on the planet. So many of our partners, when they build a well, they are actively engaged now in preserving the aquifer. Sometimes in Ethiopia, that looks like terracing. So building stone walls on the mountains. So when it does rain, instead of the topsoil rushing off, it's actually recharging the groundwater. I've been to villages where there's just massive trenches around the well, again, catching that and really worried about the resilience of a lot of these projects. I will say we're not seeing wells go dry. That is not a challenge. We have 111,000 water projects now around the world. The much bigger challenge for us is functionality. It's what happens when a well breaks and the 40-cent washer is not available through the local supply chain, or the mechanic to come and fix it is not available. And we've now invested $11 million of R&D on sensor technology. We have about 8,000 smart wells out there that are reporting back to us the amount of clean water flowing every single day through the well. And we know in those when a well breaks, and we can dispatch a mechanic to actually go and fix it. So that's been a bigger problem than maybe, dropping water tables so far for us. But I think it could be, certainly something we're thinking about in the future, and all of our local partners are thinking about.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for being here today. I know on behalf of the over 1,200 live viewers, this was amazing. I'm inspired. I hope the audience is feeling fired up. Show some love for Scott in the chat. Scott, I mean, I've literally hired people at Community Boost that wanted to get into the nonprofit space because of you and because of Charity Water. And I hope everyone here can take this energy and this momentum. I know there was just so many wisdoms and advice here too for both emerging and other organizations that have existed for decades. So thank you, Scott. We're grateful for your time today. And
well, let me just end with one quick story then to answer Janine Zupo's story. So she said, what's your favorite personal story from being on the ground, getting to clean water that we've successfully shared? So it's an old story, and it's just still so good. We were in northern Uganda. It was the end of a day, and our team was trying to visit a village without the fanfare of the celebration and the speeches and the dancing and the clapping, that sometimes takes 3 hours. And they unsuccessfully came into this village, and this woman, Helen Appio, had shut down the road. She was leading a group of women, and they were cheering, and they were shaking branches, celebrating. That settles down, and the Charity Water creative team sits with Helen and says, we just want to know, how is your life different now that you have clean water? Right? Pretty simple question. You were drinking dirty water before. Now you have clean water. How's your life different? And Helen says, now I am beautiful. And I remember our team was like, well, of course you're beautiful, Helen. You're a radiant, 65-year-old Ugandan woman. And she begins to say, no, you don't understand what I mean. I used to walk a far distance. I would carry 2 yellow jerry cans. So about 2 toilet flushes in our world, 10 gallons of water. And she said, because I had a big family, I never had enough water. So I would make these choices every day. Do I cook? Do I clean? Do I wash my kids' school uniforms? What do I do with the water? And she said, well, Ugandan women, we always put our families first. And she said, I wouldn't use the water for myself. And she said, now that there's clean water in my village, now I can take all the water that I want and I wash my face and my body and my clothes, and now I am beautiful. And she said, look at me, I'm looking so smart. And Becky Straw, who was working for us at the time, who started the Adventure Project, was there. And we have this picture of Helen that kind of, it's 1,000 words. And it's this radiant 65-year-old woman, her skin shining, her green dress perfectly clean, feeling beautiful. And that water in one village restored her dignity, that for the first time in her life, it allowed her to feel beautiful. Those are the stories that travel, and they keep us going as well, because we're like, okay, we've been able to do a version of that 15 million times for 15 million people. Let's do more.